Hey everybody, Aaron from Mythic Serpents here, and today we're going to talk about what to do whenever you first get your new snake. This is my children's python Medusa. She was a rescue and she was also my first snake. Let's talk about what you should do whenever you first bring that snake home or first get them from the mail. What are you doing? The first thing, you want to already have an enclosure set up, and if not, you need to get the enclosure set up that day before you ever get them out of the packaging, out of their little temporary tub. They need somewhere to go and somewhere to live. Uh, Most of the time, that's going to be a quarantine enclosure, which is going to be just a enclosure that is probably the minimum size requirement. It should definitely have a few hides and a few decorations, but you don't really want to go crazy. You probably want it to be on paper towels, just so that you can see any mites that fall off the snake, anything like that. I did not do that with my snakes. My snakes are in a quarantine-like enclosure. They're in a shoebox enclosure for their quarantine period, just because they were a lot smaller than I was expecting, which is my fault for uh, not researching them a little bit better. So my snakes are currently in their shoebox setup. I've got dirt in there, some substrate for them because I wanted to get them used to substrate, which I don't actually recommend doing. So I've started my snakes on substrate, mostly just because snakes can be a little bit afraid of substrate if they've never been on it before. It's a new experience. It can be a little bit scary for them. So I've got them on substrate, and I don't actually recommend that because if you have them on paper towels, it's a lot easier to see if there's any issues, like if there are mites or anything like that. And that's really important when you're dealing with new snakes. Now, my snakes came from a reptile breeder, Bushveld Reptiles, where I'm really not worried about that happening because they're very popular, very reputable, and I've not heard of any reports of them sending snakes that are uh, diseased or have mites or anything like that. But you still, even so, you want to be a little bit careful and you want to kind of watch them. But the first week, after they're in their quarantine setup, you don't want to mess with them at all. You want to leave them alone. They're just going to sit there and you're not going to bother them. You don't need to be looking into their enclosure and poking around. You don't need to be trying to handle them. You just want to let them get used to the new enclosure, the new environment, and all of the sights and sounds of the room surrounding that environment. That's really important because it's a lot of new things, and when you're a noodle with a head, the world is a scary place. So, that first week, you really want to just leave them alone and don't mess with them. Once they've been there about a week, that gives them time to kind of get settled in, get used to everything, and that's when you want to try to give them their first feeding. Depending on what kind of snake, depends on how long you'll wait and what you'll feed. So after the first week, once they've had a meal, once they've settled in, then you can start doing some light habituation and some very light handling, depending on how chill your snakes are. So with Medusa here, it was maybe a month before I could ever handle her because she is, like I said, very shy. And it was anytime I walked in front of her enclosure, she would run and hide. She's since gotten a lot better. She still won't come out on her own, but she knows I use a snake hook to get her out. The reason for that is not because I'm afraid she's going to bite me. I mean, look at her. If she bites me, I don't think it's going to do much. But it's really more for her benefit because we're warm blooded, we're warm, and snakes can sense that heat. So if I'm reaching into her enclosure and I'm grabbing her, then in her little snake brain, that feels like a predator is reaching in and grabbing her. Whereas the snake hook doesn't produce any heat. So whenever it touches her, it just feels like a branch coming underneath her. Once she's on the snake hook, she knows that I'll then reach in and grab her. So as long as she's on the snake hook, she doesn't freak out whenever I reach for her. I can just reach in and pick her up while she's on the snake hook, and then I can pretty much put the snake hook away, and she does this and just curls up around my hand. And it's pretty chill. She'll hang out like this for a while. After a while, she does start to get bored and she wants to explore. I try to let her explore because that's a good way to get your snakes used to handling is to have things that are outside of their enclosure that they can go to that can be enrichment for them. On the other hand, the two snakes that I got the other day, Anu and Ki, the two African house snakes, I have some footage that I'll try to stitch into this video of me handling Ki last night actually, because right before I fed her, I noticed that she was out exploring the enclosure and I just stuck my hand in there and she crawled right onto me, which is incredible because most snakes are going to be very afraid of you for a very long time. Not a very long time. Usually it takes at minimum a couple months to get a snake used to you enough where they'll crawl on you like Medusa is right now. But for Ki, I just stuck my hand in the enclosure and she came right to me. Like, she wasn't afraid of me at all. Anu, the male, he's easier to get out and handle, but he doesn't come to me. I have to scoop him up, which I try to avoid doing too much because I want them to feel safe in their enclosure and know that I am somebody who is not going to be just reaching in and grabbing them and hurting them. But that being said, once you've got your snakes acclimated, you do need to be handling them and socializing them. Otherwise, there's a good chance they stay afraid of you forever. There's a lot of different ways to do that. I'm hoping to do a video on that later. I went on Reddit and I made a thread just asking people how they handle their snakes, and I was really interested in all the responses because there was a lot of different ways that people kind of ask permission for their snakes to be handled, which I thought was really cool. When it comes to handling your new snakes, most of the time it's going to be forced handling to get them used to you. If you want to do choice-based handling, purely choice-based handling, then that's a lot of work, and I'm not an expert on that. I would recommend watching other experts who can help you with that. But some other things that you can be doing to get your snake used to you during that second week or third week or during the quarantine period while they're still not used to you, but maybe you're not handling them that much, you're doing some light handlings just to get them kind of acclimated. A huge thing that's really helpful is to just spend time outside their enclosure while they're active. So for Medusa, who is still here by the way, she's just kind of chilled out and my arm got tired. But for Medusa, what I do a lot of times is I'll sit in front of her enclosure and I'll read a book. And that way she sees me and she knows that I'm not messing with her, I'm not hurting her. She gets used to seeing me. Sometimes I'll open up her enclosure. She has never tried to come out of her enclosure on her own, but giving her that option, opening up the enclosure, basically lets her know that, hey, I'm here, I'm not reaching in and grabbing you and messing with you. You can come out if you want. That's kind of the basis for choice-based handling. So the light handling, the passive habituation where you're just spending time outside of their enclosure getting them used to you, those are important for young snakes and new snakes to get used to you. Their human that they have to learn is not going to hurt them. She's still out, by the way. Yeah, that's basically, to recap, whenever you first get a snake, quarantine period for 30 to 60 days. Don't mess with them at all for about a week. After they've been fed some light handling and passive habituation, you don't want to do that the first week, but after that first week, you definitely want to start doing that. And then, once you've kind of got those basics down, once they've been there for a while, they've got used to everything, then you can start introducing other forms of enrichment, whether that's building like a snake jungle gym or bringing them new toys for their enclosure and rotating those out. There's lots of things you can do, and I'll probably talk about those in another video, but for this video, we've covered all the topics that I wanted to reach out and cover. And we talked about some of the mistakes I made, right? So I'm still learning, and I'm learning a lot more every day. So I'm really excited to keep making these videos and to keep working with these amazing snakes. I'll see you next time.